The first thing I heard when I opened my eyes for the second time in my life was my roommate whispering my name like she was already practicing how to sound innocent. "Elena," she said from the bottom bunk, sweet as syrup left too long in the sun. "You awake?" My heart stopped before the room did. I knew that voice. I knew the scratch in it from pretending to cry. I knew the little upward tilt on my name, the one she used whenever she wanted something she had no right to touch. In my last life, that voice had asked for my calculator battery 12 minutes before the final exam doors closed. In my last life, I had handed it over because she was shaking, because we were roommates, because she said her future would collapse without it, because I thought being kind during someone else's panic made me a good person. Then my own calculator died halfway through Section C, the numerical reasoning section worth 40% of the grade. I still remembered staring at the blank screen, pressing on so hard my thumb went white, while the invigilator told me I could continue by hand if I wished. By hand. On a paper filled with logarithms, compound growth, regression tables, probability distributions, and multi-step finance equations designed to punish hesitation. I failed by 1.8 marks. She passed by 0.6. By dawn, her name sat above mine on the scholarship list, and mine disappeared from the medical foundation program entirely. She cried in the hallway and hugged me, whispering, "I wish it hadn't happened like this," while her cheek pressed against mine, warm and dry. 3 months later, I found out she had never needed my battery. She had taken it because mine was new, hers was old, and she knew the exam would drain hers before the final page. 6 months later, I learned she had also told the review board I was the one who begged her to swap calculators, that I panicked, that I always panicked, that maybe the stress had made me unstable. 1 year later, I was working night shifts in a pharmacy warehouse, my hands cracked from cardboard dust, watching her acceptance interview on the university's official page. 2 years later, I died on a wet road after a double shift, still carrying a broken calculator in my bag like a stupid little relic of the day I learned generosity could be weaponized. So when I opened my eyes and saw the dorm room ceiling again, the glow-in-the-dark stars Mara had stuck there in a fake burst of childishness, the cracked corner of my desk mirror, the blue exam timetable pinned above my lamp, and the digital clock blinking 5:18 a.m. on the exact morning of the Meridian National Final, I did not scream. I did not cry. I did not waste a single second asking the universe why it had dragged me back to the worst morning of my life. I simply reached under my pillow, found my calculator, turned it on, saw the clean black digits appear, and smiled so slowly that my face felt unfamiliar. "I'm awake," I said. "And no, Mara. You can't have my battery." Silence dropped from the top bunk to the floor like a glass breaking without sound. Mara did not answer immediately, and that was how I knew I had cut the string before she pulled it. In my last life, I had mumbled, "What happened?" and she had already climbed halfway up my ladder with her calculator open in one hand and tears wetting her lashes. This time, she stayed below, invisible except for the shadow of her shoulders moving against the wall. "What?" she said, softer now, the sweetness thinning. "I didn't even ask yet. You were going to." I sat up and swung my legs over the side of the mattress. The floor was cold, the kind of cold that belonged only to exam mornings, when the whole building held its breath, and every girl in dorm C pretended she slept. Across the room, our third roommate, Nia, was curled under a gray blanket, snoring lightly, unaware that time had folded itself in half beside her laundry basket. Mara rose slowly from her chair. She wore the same cream cardigan as before, the one with pearl buttons, her hair clipped back with the green bow she only wore when she wanted adults to think of her as harmless. Her calculator lay open on her palm, battery cover removed, the tiny round cell exposed like a missing tooth. "Elena, don't be weird. Mine flickered during practice. I only need yours for the morning. I'll give it back after." The script was almost perfect. Same words, same tremble, same calculated helplessness. But in my last life, I had missed one detail because I was terrified of the exam. Her school bag was already packed. Her admission slip was already inside the front pocket. Her spare pens were already arranged. She had planned for everything except the battery she expected to steal from me politely. Buy one from the campus shop, I said. It opens at 6. The exam hall opens at 6:15. Then hurry. Her eyes narrowed for half a second, so fast another version of me might have called it imagination. You know they sell cheap batteries there. They don't last. Then you should have bought one yesterday. She laughed once, breathy and offended, as if I had slapped her in a church. Are you seriously doing this right now? On final day. I climbed down from the bunk with my calculator pressed against my chest. Every part of my body remembered fear, but underneath it something harder was waking. Not anger exactly. Anger is loud. This was colder. This was the sound a lock makes when it finally closes. Yes, I said. Especially on final day. Mara stared at me as if she was waiting for the real Elena to return, the Elena who apologized when someone stepped on her shoe, who shared highlighters until the ink dried out, who let Mara use her notes and her charger and her student portal login, just for a second, who believed friendship meant never embarrassing someone by making them admit they were using you. I knew that girl. I had buried her twice. Mara lowered her voice. You're tired. You're stressed. I get it, but don't take it out on me. There it was, the first stitch in the net. Make my refusal emotional. Make her request reasonable. Make me the unstable one before anyone else entered the room. In my last life, she had used that same line at the appeal hearing while I sat across from 3 administrators under fluorescent lights. Elena had been under a lot of stress, she had said, eyes shining. I didn't want to blame her. I felt my fingernails dig into my palm. I'm not stressed. I'm prepared. Prepared people help their friends. Prepared people bring their own batteries. Nia stirred under her blanket and muttered, Both of you shut up. Mara's head snapped toward her, then back to me. Her face changed again, smoother this time.
Fine.
I'll pay you. She reached for her purse on the desk. 20.
No, Fefe. No, Elena.
The sweet voice cracked, and something metallic showed underneath. Do you want me to fail? I almost laughed because the question was so clean, so perfect, so cruel. In my last life, she had wanted me to fail so badly that she stood beside me while it happened and still asked me for a hair tie after the exam. But I did not say that. Rebirth gives you many things, but it does not give you the luxury of sounding sane when you tell the truth too early. I want you to take your exam with your own equipment, I said. That's all. She stepped closer. You know what this final means to me. I know exactly what it means. My family can't afford another year. Neither can mine. You're always good at math. You can do things by hand. My stomach turned. There. The second stitch. In her mind, my ability made my resources communal. I was good enough to be drained, not good enough to be protected. Then you'll be fine without mine, I said. You told everyone you were better than me. Mara's mouth opened, then closed. A red patch rose under her left cheekbone. She was beautiful in the way sharp things can be beautiful when they catch light. All soft hair and fragile wrists and eyes people wanted to rescue. She looked toward Nia again to see if she was awake enough to witness, but Nia only rolled over. Mara leaned in until I smelled mint toothpaste. Don't start acting proud now, she whispered. It doesn't suit you. In my last life, that sentence would have shattered me for the rest of the morning. This time, it landed on the floor between us like a dead insect. I picked up my pencil case, zipped my calculator inside, and said, Neither does begging. But here we are. The interruption came from the hallway, 3 sharp knocks, then our floor monitor's voice slicing through the dorm. Final candidates, lights on in 10. Breakfast hall opens at 5:40. Bring admission slips, ID cards, approved calculators, and spare materials. No sharing inside the venue. No sharing inside the venue. I nearly closed my eyes at the irony, but Mara moved first. She crossed to the door and opened it with the sudden brightness of a girl in a school brochure. Good morning, Miss Vale, she called. Quick question. If someone's calculator battery dies before the exam, can a roommate lend them one? I turned slowly. Miss Vale stood in the hallway wearing a navy blazer, hair twisted into a severe bun, clipboard hugged to her chest. In my last life, I had barely noticed her. She had been the invigilator who told me to keep writing by hand. Now I studied her face like evidence. She looked from Mara to me, then to the calculator battery cover in Mara's hand. Before check-in, students are responsible for their own materials. During the exam, no exchange of equipment or components is allowed. So, before check-in it's okay? Mara asked quickly. Miss Vale's eyes sharpened. I said students are responsible for their own materials. Mara smiled as if that had answered her. Of course. Thank you. She began to close the door, but I moved before it shut. Miss Vale, I said, stepping into view. Could you please note that I am keeping my own calculator and battery with me? I don't consent to lending or swapping any part of it. Mara's smile froze. Miss Vale blinked, then looked at me properly for the first time. Is there a dispute? No dispute, I said. Just clarity. Mara laughed, but it came out too high. Elena's joking. We're roommates. She's being dramatic because she's studied all night. Miss Vale did not laugh. Teachers rarely enjoy being made part of a joke before sunrise. She wrote something on her clipboard. Both of you should bring your calculators to the equipment table early. If there is any issue, report it there. Do not handle each other's devices. Of course, I said. Thank you. When I closed the door, Mara's face had lost its softness completely. What is wrong with you? She hissed. My answer was already inside me, old and calm. I remember things now. What things? Enough. She did not ask again. That was the first real fracture in the morning. A guilty person fears specifics, an innocent one demands them. Mara turned away and began tearing through her drawer, making noise on purpose, throwing lip balm, receipts, and folded socks onto the floor. Nia finally sat up, hair wild, eyes half open. Why is everyone fighting about batteries at dawn? Because Elena thinks she's the main character of a tragedy, Mara snapped. Because Mara didn't prepare for the most important exam of our lives, I said, and pulled my uniform blouse from the chair. Nia looked between us, slowly waking into curiosity. Wait, your calculator battery is dead? No, Mara said too fast. It just flickered. Nia scratched her cheek. I told you last week to get a new one. You said Elena always carries spares. The room went still. Mara turned to her. I said no such thing. Nia frowned. You did. In the laundry room. You said she was paranoid about equipment, so you didn't need to stress. My heartbeat thudded once, heavy and bright. In my last life, Nia had slept through the whole argument, then avoided the hearing because she said she didn't want drama. I had resented her for years. But now, sitting in her blanket like a sleepy witness sent by God, she had just cracked open the first hidden window. Mara's expression changed so quickly I almost admired it. I was joking, obviously. It didn't sound like a joke. Nia yawned. Anyway, don't touch Elena's stuff. She labels everything like a crime scene. Thank you, I said. Mara's eyes flicked to my pencil case. I saw the calculation form and die there. She could still grab it, but now Nia was awake. Miss Vale had a note, and I was standing with my back to the door. Time had not only returned me, it had returned the tiny seconds where truth could be placed like stones in a river, one by one, until someone else's lie could no longer cross. Mara grabbed her blazer from the wardrobe.
Fine. Keep your precious battery.
I'll remember this. You remembered last time, I said before I could stop myself.
She paused.
What? I buttoned my blouse with steady fingers. Nothing. Go by one. She left without breakfast, and the door slammed hard enough to rattle the mirror. The old Elena would have chased her, apologized, pressed the battery into her hand, and felt grateful to be forgiven. I sat on the edge of my bed instead and opened my pencil case. Inside were 3 pens, 2 pencils, a ruler, eraser, admission slip, student ID, calculator, and the small sealed packet of spare batteries I had bought in my first life but never opened because Mara had taken the one inside my calculator before I thought to protect it. I remembered the purchase with absurd clarity. Campus shop, for 32 p.m., the cashier with chipped purple nails, the rain beginning outside, Mara texting me, "Can you grab noodles? I'm starvin'." I had bought her noodles too. She ate them while complaining that the broth was too salty. I held the packet now and felt something close to grief. Not for the battery, not for the exam, but for the girl who had mistaken being useful for being loved. Nia climbed down from her bunk and peered over my shoulder. You actually have spares? Yes. And you still said no? Yes. She studied my face. That's new. I'm trying it. Is she really that bad? I looked at her. In my last life, after my appeal failed, Nia had sent one message. Sorry, I didn't know what to say. I had hated that message until the day I died. But now she was here, before the damage, before cowardice had hardened into silence. I could still choose what kind of witness she became. Mara is the kind of person who makes you feel cruel for keeping what belongs to you, I said. That's bad enough. Nia's mouth tightened. She nodded once, then opened her own drawer. Do you want me to walk with you? The offer startled me. You don't have the final. No, but I have insomnia and a grudge against dramatic people. I almost smiled. Breakfast first. Good. Because I'm not witnessing a battery war on an empty stomach. The breakfast hall looked exactly as I remembered, and not at all like memory. In my last life, it had been a blur of fluorescent light, metal trays, girls whispering formulas over boiled eggs, boys from North Wing tapping calculators like rosary beads, tutors pretending not to hover near the coffee urns. This time, every detail sharpened until it felt staged, the steam rising from rice porridge, the clock above the serving counter ticking towards 6, the emergency exit sign buzzing, the merit board at the far wall covered with last year's winners, Mara's empty seat at our usual table like a missing piece in a trap. Nia sat opposite me and ate toast with the focus of someone who had chosen breakfast as her moral position. She's going to tell everyone you sabotaged her, she said. Probably. Do you care? I looked toward the hall entrance. Mara had just appeared, cheeks flushed from the cold, hair slightly loosened, campus shop bag clenched in her fist. Behind her came Tessa and Leanne from the scholarship prep circle, both wearing the tense expressions of girls who had been recruited into someone else's emergency. Mara saw me immediately. Her eyes dropped to my pencil case, then lifted to my face. A performance began before she even reached the table. I got one, she announced, placing the shop bag down. No thanks to some people. Tessa looked uncomfortable. Elena, you really wouldn't lend her one for 10 minutes? Nia put down her toast. She shouldn't have to. Mara laughed softly. It's fine. I learned who my friends are. At 6 in the morning? Nia asked. Efficient. Leanne coughed into her cup, hiding a smile. Mara ignored her and sat beside Tessa, turning her back toward me. In my last life, that back would have devastated me. Mara's silence was a weather system. If she froze you out, the whole room got colder. But now I watched the curve of her shoulders and saw something else. Strain. She had bought a battery, yes, but not the right kind. I knew because the campus shop only sold the cheap zinc version in blue packaging on exam mornings, the ones students bought for wall clocks and emergency remotes, not calculators that had already been flickering under heavy use. Mara had known it too. That was why she wanted mine. She could still sit the exam, but she could not coast. She could not rely on certainty. And for Mara, uncertainty was acid. Elena, Tessa said gently, you always carry extras. Would it really have hurt? I met her eyes. Yes. The table quieted. Because last time I gave away what I needed, I paid for it. I'm not doing that anymore. Tessa looked confused, but Nia did not. Mara went very still. I had not accused her. I had not explained. I had simply placed a locked door in the middle of the room and let everyone notice who reached for the handle. At 6:13, the first announcement chimed through the hall. Meridian National Final Candidates, please proceed to the East Examination Center. Equipment check begins in 2 minutes. Candidates arriving after 6:40 will not be admitted.
Chairs scraped.
Conversations turned brittle. Someone dropped a spoon. Mara stood so fast her tray slid, and Tessa caught it before the porridge spilled. Careful, Tessa said.
Fine.
Mara's voice was a blade wrapped in ribbon. She pushed ahead with the crowd, and I let her. In my last life, I walked beside her, comforting her while she held the battery that should have powered my future. This time, I walked behind her with Nia at my side, and my calculator zipped deep inside my pencil case. The corridor to the east center had tall windows overlooking the courtyard, where dawn had begun staining the sky pale orange. Students moved in clusters, whispering equations and prayers. Posters on the walls screamed cheerful lies. Your preparation brought you here. Trust yourself. Success is built daily. I almost laughed at the last one. Success was built daily, yes, but so was betrayal. It was built from borrowed chargers not returned, notes photographed without permission, apologies shaped like hooks, little emergencies that trained you to abandon yourself quickly. Mara had not ruined me in one morning. She had practiced on me all year. The battery was only the final object she took, because I had taught her my boundaries were decorative. At the equipment checkpoint, 3 long tables divided the candidates by surname. Invigilators checked IDs, admission slips, calculator models, and pencil cases. Miss Vale stood at table 2. When she saw me, her eyes flicked down to her clipboard.
Elena Vos.
Yes. I handed over my ID and calculator. She checked the approved model number, opened the back cover just enough to inspect the battery compartment, then closed it. You have spares? Sealed packet, I said, placing it beside the calculator. Purchased yesterday. For my own use only. Miss Vale's face remained neutral, but her pen moved. Noted. Behind me, Mara made a small sound. I did not turn. Miss Vale handed my things back. Seat C18. Place all spares visibly on the top right corner of your desk. Raise your hand if you need to replace anything. Do not leave your seat. Understood. As I moved away, Mara stepped forward. Mara Lynn, she said brightly.
Seat.
C19, Miss Vale replied. My fingers tightened around my pencil case. C19. In my last life, she had sat directly behind me. This time, because of the morning's note or because fate enjoyed theater, she would sit beside me. The examination hall was a converted auditorium with the stage curtains tied back and 200 desks arranged in cruelly perfect rows. The air smelled of disinfectant, paper, and panic. Seat C18 waited near the middle aisle. C19 sat to my right. In my last life, I remembered Mara behind me whispering, "You'll be okay?" After my calculator died, her voice, so gentle the invigilator did not hear the satisfaction. Now she lowered herself into the desk beside me and arranged her supplies with trembling precision. 3 pens, 1 pencil, eraser, admission slip, calculator, shop battery packaging already torn open, and no spares. Her calculator turned on when she pressed it. I saw the digits flash. Good. This mattered. I did not want to be accused of stopping her from taking the exam. I wanted the truth to have clean edges. She had equipment. She had opportunity. She had exactly what she brought. Nothing more. Nothing mine. A boy in front of us crossed himself. Someone behind us was breathing too fast. Miss Vale walked the aisle. Calculators on. Clear memory if applicable.
No covers.
Spare batteries visible. Phones sealed in bags under desks. You may not communicate once papers are distributed. Mara leaned toward me, so slightly it could have been a shift of posture. Last chance, she breathed. I kept my eyes forward. For you to apologize? For you to not be a monster. I was a martyr last time. It didn't suit me either. Her fingers froze on her pen. Why do you keep saying that? The papers landed on our desks before I could answer.
Heavy. White. Sealed.
Final paper A. Quantitative reasoning and applied analysis. My body remembered the weight of it like a scar remembers rain. The chief invigilator began reading instructions from the podium. 15 minutes reading time.
2 hours writing time.
Section A multiple choice. Section B short response. Section C applied numerical analysis. Section D extended data interpretation. My ears filled with my own pulse. Rebirth had brought me back, but it had not taken the exam for me. My scholarship still lived or died on these pages. Refusing Mara was not victory. It was only the removal of a knife from my own throat. I still had to run. The seal broke. The room turned pages as one animal. I opened the first question and saw it, a depreciation model involving hospital equipment values over 7 years. In my last life, I had panicked because Mara's crisis had eaten my calm before the paper began. This time, my pencil moved before fear found me. Present value. Annual decline. Residual. Check units. Circle answer. Next. For the first 30 minutes, Mara was silent, and I let myself believe the morning had become ordinary. My calculator worked cleanly. My thoughts lined up. Section A fell away. Section B had a tricky probability tree, but I had practiced 3 versions at midnight in both lives, so my hand barely slowed. Across the hall, pages turned, chairs creaked, invigilators paced. Mara tapped her calculator beside me with increasing force.
Once. Twice.
A pause. Then rapid taps like rain on tin. I did not look. Looking would make me part of her story. I stayed inside mine. At question 18, I reached the first regression table. In my last life, this was where my calculator's screen faded. I remembered the sick drop in my stomach, the way the digits thinned like ghosts, the final blink, then nothing. My hand shook over the same line now. The past leaned close. For one terrifying second, I expected the screen to die again because trauma is a superstition the body believes. I pressed the key. The answer appeared dark and clear. I exhaled so quietly it almost hurt. Beside me, Mara whispered, "No, Miss Vale's shoes stopped somewhere behind us." Mara pressed on again. Her calculator lit, then flickered. Lit, then flickered. She cupped it with both hands, as if warming a bird. I kept writing. "Candidate C19, Miss Vale said softly. Is there an issue?" Mara's voice came out thin. "It's fine. If your calculator is malfunctioning, raise your hand." "It's fine," she repeated, sharper. I heard the click of Miss Vale's pen. I moved to the next question. The pattern interrupted itself then, not with Mara, not with the calculator, but with the paper. Question 22 was different. In my last life, I remembered a compound interest question about tuition loans. This time, it was a medication dosage decay problem with a half-life table and an instruction to justify rounding. For a moment, my mind stumbled. Rebirth had not given me an answer key. Of course it hadn't. Why would time return me to a world that stayed still? I felt panic flare bright and stupid. Then I saw the trick. It was not a new concept, only a new costume. Exponential decay. Units in milligrams. Rounding to safe dosage. I underlined safe twice and solved. That was the second lesson of the morning. The future could change its clothes. Preparation had to be stronger than memory. Mara's calculator died completely at 8:02. I know because the wall clock sat directly above the podium, and her breath stopped so violently I heard it over the scratch of 200 pencils. She pressed on. Nothing. She pressed again. Nothing. She opened the battery cover with her thumbnail, which was against instructions, and Miss Vale appeared beside her like judgment in sensible shoes. Candidate C19, hands away from the device. Mara's eyes filled instantly. The battery slipped. Hands away. I have to fix it. Raise your hand and wait for assistance. I don't have time. Miss Vale's voice remained quiet, which somehow made it stronger. You will lose more time if you continue handling equipment improperly. Mara's face turned toward me for one split second. Not a plea. Not even anger. A command. The old command, polished by a year of my obedience. Give it. Fix this. Become useful again. I placed my spare packet on the top right corner of my desk, exactly where instructed, and rested my left hand over it without looking away from my paper. Mara saw. Miss Vale saw. Maybe half the row saw. The world did not explode. No one dragged me outside. No angel appeared to accuse me of cruelty. I simply kept what belonged to me, and the earth continued spinning. Miss Vale crouched beside Mara's desk. You purchased this battery today? Yes. Do you have another approved spare? No. Then continue with manual calculations. If you wish to request a replacement from the central desk, I can ask, but availability is not guaranteed and waiting time will not be compensated. Mara looked at the paper, then at the dead calculator, then at me again. Tears spilled over, silent and perfect. In my last life, those tears had opened every door. This time, they only blurred her own page. "Ask," she whispered. Miss Vale stood and signaled another invigilator. I returned to Section C. The numbers were brutal. Growth projections, weighted averages, confidence intervals, graph interpretation. Without a calculator, each question became a swamp. With one, it was still hard, but hard is honest. Hard does not steal from you. Hard does not hug you afterward and call itself fate. I worked until my shoulder ached. Mara scratched beside me, then erased, then scratched again. At 8:17, an invigilator returned and leaned down to Miss Vale, who approached Mara. "No compatible replacements available at the central desk," she said. "You may continue by hand." Mara made a sound so small it almost brought back the old Elena by reflex. Almost. Then I remembered fluorescent appeal rooms, warehouse shifts, wet asphalt, and her dry cheek against mine. I turned the page. The third interruption came at Section D. My pen ran out. It should have been nothing. I had 2 spares. But for half a second, the blank line at the tip of the pen looked like prophecy, and my body flashed back to helplessness, so sharply my vision narrowed. Mara heard the scratch stop. Her head turned slightly. I could feel her attention sharpen. In that tiny pause, I understood something ugly and important. People like Mara do not only wait for your kindness, they wait for your weakness, too. If my hand shook, if I looked lost, if I needed anything, she would use it later. She would say I was unstable. She would say I had panicked. She would say the battery argument was part of a pattern. I set the dead pen down, picked up the second, clicked it, and continued within 3 seconds. A small act. A private rescue. But I felt something inside me stand taller. Section D asked us to analyze a public health funding model and identify where a projected budget had been misinterpreted by a junior analyst. I almost smiled. The question was about false assumptions hidden under clean formatting. It might as well have been Mara wearing a spreadsheet. I wrote the answer with ruthless clarity. The error arises from treating a temporary increase as a permanent trend. My pen dug into the paper. This inflates future expectations and produces an unstable projection. Beside me, Mara was counting under her breath. 17.4, no. 16, no. Her eraser tore the corner of the page. Miss Vale paused again but said nothing. At 8:52, Mara began crying audibly. Not loud enough to be removed. Loud enough to be heard. A few heads lifted. The chief invigilator warned the room to keep eyes on papers. I did. I had 4 questions left. My brain was tired, but it was mine. My equipment was mine. My score would be mine. At 9:10, 5 minutes before the end, Mara stopped writing. She placed her pencil down, folded her hands, and stared at the front wall with the strange calm of someone already choosing a story that would survive the facts. That frightened me more than her panic. Panic burns out. Calculation does not. When the final minute was called, I checked my answer sheet, corrected 1 rounding value, and placed my pen down only when instructed. Papers were collected row by row. Mara did not look at me. Her eyes were red, her face pale, her lips pressed together. But when Miss Vale took her paper, Mara whispered something I could not hear. Miss Vale's expression did not change. She wrote on the clipboard again. The hallway after a final exam is never a hallway. It is a courtroom without a judge, a hospital waiting room without doctors, a battlefield where everyone pretends they were not hit. Students spilled out in waves, laughing too loudly, comparing answers they should have left buried, crying into sleeves, calling parents, refreshing group chats. Mara walked ahead of me with Tessa and Leanne closing around her like curtains. Nia waited near the vending machines, holding 2 canned coffees. "You alive?" she asked. "More than last time," I said. She handed me one without asking what I meant. "Mara's telling people you humiliated her." "Already. She's efficient too." Across the corridor, Mara stood with at least 6 candidates, one hand pressed to her forehead. Tessa looked distressed. Leanne looked uncertain. A boy named Colin kept glancing at me with the wide-eyed fascination of someone watching a scandal assemble itself in real time. Mara's voice rose just enough to carry. I'm not saying she caused it. I'm saying she knew. She had spares. She watched me beg. Nia muttered, "Oh, this girl." I opened my coffee. Let her talk.
Why?
Because this time, people heard the beginning. But Mara was good. I had forgotten how good because, in my memory, she had already won. Now I watched her build the bridge, while standing on the ruins. She did not say I stole anything. She did not say I broke her calculator. She said I watched. She said I refused basic kindness. She said I changed overnight. She said, I don't even know why she hates me.
Hatred.
Another stitch. If I hated her, my refusal became emotional. If my refusal was emotional, her failure became my revenge rather than her lack of preparation. By lunch, half the dorm would believe I had chosen scholarship competition over friendship. By evening, the story would gain sharper teeth. By dawn, when scores posted, she would need those teeth. I walked toward her before Nia could stop me. The group quieted as I approached. Mara looked up, tears renewed instantly. Please don't, she whispered, as if I had come to strike her. I stopped at a polite distance. Mara, did I touch your calculator today? Her lashes fluttered. No. Did I take your battery? No, but did you have a working calculator at the start of the exam? It was flickering. Did Miss Vale inspect both our calculators before check-in? Her mouth tightened. Yes. Did she tell us not to handle each other's devices? Tessa's eyes shifted. Mara's face hardened. This isn't about rules. It's about decency. I nodded. Then let's be decent and tell the whole truth. You plan to rely on my battery before asking me. Nia heard you say it last week. Miss Vale noted this morning that I did not consent to lending my equipment. You bought a replacement. It failed. That's awful. But it is not my fault. The group went silent. Mara stared at me with wet, furious eyes. You sound rehearse.
So do you, I said.
That should have been the end of the hallway version. It was not. Mara stepped closer and lowered her voice, but not enough. Be careful, Elena. People don't like girls who act cold. The sentence touched an old bruise. In my last life, I had been liked all the way into failure. Teachers liked my helpfulness. Classmates liked my notes. Mara liked my batteries. Everyone liked me until I needed them to believe me. Then evaporated. I looked at the faces around us, all waiting to see whether I would soften, apologize, become easier to forgive. People don't like girls who tell the truth either, I said. But I'm starting to prefer it. Leanne's mouth parted slightly. Tessa looked down. Mara's tears stopped. Not dried, stopped, as if someone had shut off a tap. There she was. The girl behind the girl. You think one exam makes you better than me? She said.
No.
I think one exam reveals what we bring into the room. Her hand twitched toward her pocket. For a moment, I thought she might have recorded me, or that she might pretend I threatened her. Then another voice cut through the corridor. Miss Voss. Miss Lynn. A word. Miss Vale stood at the end of the hall, clipboard still in hand. The crowd shifted with a collective intake of breath. Mara's face transformed again, wounded and obedient. Of course, she said. I followed. Nia started after me, but Miss Vale held up a hand. Just the candidates. She led us into a small side room used for storage during assemblies. Stacked chairs lined the wall. A cracked whiteboard leaned in the corner. The door remained open, which I appreciated more than she knew. Miss Vale turned to Mara first. You made a statement to the collection invigilator suggesting there may have been equipment interference before the exam. My blood cooled. So that was what she had whispered. Mara swallowed. I said I was worried. About interference? About the situation. Miss Vale looked at me. Miss Voss, did you at any point handle Miss Lynn's calculator or battery? No. Did you deny her access to her own equipment? No. Did you refuse to lend your own battery? Yes. Why? Because I needed it for my own calculator, and because she had expected to use mine instead of preparing her own. Mara gasped. That's not fair. Miss Vale turned back to her. Miss Lynn, did you tell others before today that Miss Voss carried spare batteries? Mara's lips parted. She was trapped by a question that sounded casual, but carried Nia's name behind it. I may have mentioned it. Did you purchase your own battery before today? No. Did your calculator begin the exam functioning? Yes, but poorly. Did you accept the risk of using it? Mara's eyes filled again, slower this time. What choice did I have? Miss Vale's voice softened, but not in the way Mara wanted. The choice existed yesterday. And the day before. That is why candidates receive equipment instructions 2 weeks in advance. For one shining second, I thought Miss Vale would close the matter there. But Rebirth had taught me not to trust early relief. Miss Vale folded her hands over the clipboard. There is another issue. Mara and I both looked at her. During equipment check, Miss Lynn's calculator model was approved. However, when the battery compartment was opened during the exam, the invigilator observed paper residue inside the rear casing. Mara's face went blank. My fingers went cold around my coffee can. Paper residue. In my last life, I never knew. I had imagined simple selfishness. She took my battery, because hers was weak. But Miss Vale's words opened a darker door. Mara recovered quickly. It's old. There was a sticker. The invigilator did not remove the device during the exam because doing so would have disrupted the room and because you were already unable to use it. After collection, the calculator was retained for inspection under exam irregularity procedures. Mara's voice sharpened. You took my calculator? It was on your desk after papers were collected. Candidates agree that equipment may be inspected if irregularities are suspected. That's my property, and it will be returned after review. I stared at Mara. She did not look at me. Her eyes fixed on Miss Vale with an expression I recognized from a memory that had not happened now. Appeal room Mara, wounded by accountability, offended that consequences, did not ask permission. Miss Vale continued. For now, both of you are instructed not to discuss allegations publicly. Scores will be processed as scheduled. Any irregularity finding will be communicated through the academic office. So, she gets away with it? Mara burst out, pointing at me. With what? Miss Vale asked. With setting me up. The room changed. Even the stacked chairs seemed to listen. Mara was crying again, but the tears had heat in them now. She knew my calculator was weak. She refused to help. She made a scene in front of you, so I'd look suspicious. She probably knew you'd inspect it. She's been acting strange all morning, saying things like, last time. Ask her. Ask her what she means. Miss Vale looked at me. There it was. The one truth I could not explain without sounding insane. Time travel is a terrible alibi. I set my coffee can on the shelf beside me. I meant the last time I let someone pressure me into giving away something I needed, I said. Not another exam. A pattern. Mara laughed through tears. Convenient. Yes, I said. Boundaries often are. Miss Vale watched us both for a long moment. She was younger than I had thought in my first life, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and a face trained to survive teenage catastrophe without flinching. Finally, she said, You may both leave. Miss Lynn, you will receive an email if further information is required. Miss Voss, same applies. Do not engage in speculation.
Do not post about this.
Do not encourage others to take sides. Understood, I said. Mara said nothing. We stepped into the corridor, and for the first time all morning, she did not perform.
No tears. No trembling.
Just a flat, pale fury that looked almost peaceful. What did you do? She whispered. I should have walked away. I know that. But the old life stood behind me, drenched in rain, asking for one sentence. Just one. Nothing, I said. That's the part you can't survive. Her eyes flashed. Then she smiled. It was small and private, and worse than anger. Scores come out at dawn, she said. People forget process when they see numbers. Remember that. She left before I could answer, blending into the corridor with her cardigan and red eyes, already becoming a victim again for the crowd. Nia hurried to me the second Mara disappeared. What happened? I told her only the safe parts. Calculator retained, residue review. Nia's eyebrows climbed. Residue. Apparently. Like, cheating? Maybe. The words sat between us, ugly and electric. Nia lowered her voice. Elena, did you know? I could have said no. It would have been mostly true. I had known Mara was dangerous. I had not known about residue. But I thought of all the times Mara had asked to study alone with my calculator because she liked the buttons, the times she borrowed tape, the tiny folded papers she used for affirmations, the way she never let anyone else touch her pencil case. Maybe some part of me had known the shape of it, even if not the detail. I knew she was capable of more than panic, I said. Nia nodded slowly. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. She accepted that, which made me like her more than I expected. By noon, the campus had divided itself into 3 countries: people who believed Mara, people who believed rules, and people who enjoyed bloodsport. The group chat became a bonfire. Tessa wrote a careful message about empathy and exam stress. Leanne replied with preparation matters too, then deleted it after 3 minutes. Colin posted a meme of a dead calculator, got attacked, apologized, then privately messaged me. Did she really have cheat notes? I did not answer. Mara posted nothing, which was smarter. Silence lets other people decorate you. By 1 p.m., girls from dorm C were carrying trays to her bed like she had survived surgery. By 2 p.m., someone claimed I had laughed when her calculator died. By 3 p.m., someone else said I had 3 spare batteries and refused all of them, as if owning 3 transformed one into public infrastructure. By 4 p.m., the story reached Dr. Astor, our scholarship coordinator, who sent a bland email reminding candidates that all concerns should go through official channels. I lay on my bunk with my curtains drawn, not sleeping, not studying, not celebrating. Victory, I discovered, was not the opposite of fear. It was fear with its hands untied. My future was still not secure. Scores could shift. Mara could lie better. The residue could be explained. The review could vanish into administrative fog. People could decide I was cruel even if I was right. Rebirth had not turned the world fair. It had only placed me before the moment I betrayed myself and asked, again? My phone buzzed. A message from Tessa. Can we talk? I stared at it until the screen dimmed. In my last life, Tessa had testified for Mara, not because she hated me, but because Mara cried first. I wanted to ignore her. Instead, I typed, in writing only. She replied after a long pause. Did Mara really say she planned to use your spare? I answered, asked Nia what she heard. Another pause. Then, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I almost threw the phone across the room, not because the apology was bad, but because it was late in a way she could not understand. In this life, it was only hours late. In me, it was years. Nia pulled my curtain aside without asking. Mara's mother is downstairs.
What?
With the dean of residence. The pattern interrupted again. Mara's mother arrived like a woman accustomed to turning rooms into witnesses. I had met her once in my last life during awards night, when she wore white silk and thanked me for being such a supportive friend to our Mara, as if I were a cushion her daughter had earned. Now she stood in the dorm common room with a beige handbag on her arm, pearls at her throat, and outrage arranged neatly across her face. The dean of residence, Mr. Calder, stood beside her looking already exhausted. Mara sat on the couch with a blanket around her shoulders, though the room was warm. Several girls hovered near the kitchenette pretending to make tea. Nia and I stopped at the stairs. Mara saw me and immediately lowered her eyes. Her mother turned. You must be Elena. The way she said it made my name sound like something found under a shoe. Yes. I'm Mrs. Lin. I would like to understand why my daughter has spent the most important day of her academic life being bullied by her own roommate. Mr. Calder cleared his throat. Mrs. Lin, we're not holding an inquiry in the common room. Then perhaps someone should have held one before my daughter was publicly humiliated. Mara sniffed into a tissue. Beautiful. Seamless. Nia whispered, Do you want me to get Miss Vale? I said, Not yet. The old Elena would have apologized to Mrs. Lin because adults scared her, because rich mothers scared her more, because she would rather be misunderstood than impolite. I walked down the last steps and stood with my hands visible at my sides. "I'm sorry Mara had a difficult exam," I said. I didn't bully her. Mrs. Lin's eyebrows lifted. "You refused to lend her a battery."
Correct.
A battery. My battery. A tiny thing. Then it should have been easy for her to provide her own. Someone in the kitchenette made a choking sound and turned it into a cough. Mrs. Lin's face tightened. Mara whispered, "Mom, don't. She's enjoying this." "I'm not," I said, looking directly at her. "That's what bothers you." Mr. Calder stepped in. "Elena, Mara, this matter is under exam review. No one should be making accusations." "My daughter is the one being accused," Mrs. Lin said. Her calculator was confiscated like she was a criminal. A ripple moved through the common room. Confiscated had not been public until now. Mara's eyes widened slightly. Mrs. Lin had overplayed because she was used to winning with volume. I felt the room adjust. "Why was it confiscated?" a girl named Priya asked before she could stop herself. Mr. Calder said sharply, "That is not dorm business." Nia folded her arms. "But Elena refusing a battery is?" Silence. Mrs. Lin turned on her. "And you are?" "Awake this morning," Nia said. "Unlike most of the people with opinions." That was when Mara began to cry for real. I knew because real tears made her angry, and her mouth twisted before she covered it. "Why are you all doing this?" she said. "I made one mistake. I forgot one thing. Elena had extra. She could have helped. She wanted me to suffer." Mrs. Lin moved to hold her, glaring at me over Mara's head.
There.
"You hear her." I did hear her. I heard the genius of it. One mistake. One forgotten thing. She shrank the whole year into a battery because a battery was small enough to make me look monstrous. I thought of the noodles, the notes, the chargers, the login codes, the borrowed blazer, the application essay I helped edit until it sounded like me, the practice exams she photographed when I went to shower, the time she told everyone I loved being useful because it gave me confidence. One mistake?
No.
1,000 rehearsals. But if I listed them, I would sound petty. Patterned exploitation is hard to prove because each individual thread looks too thin to matter. I needed a rope. "Mara," I said, "open your messages." Her head snapped up. "What?" "Open our chat. Search the word borrow." Her face changed. Mrs. Lin frowned. "What game is this?" "Not a game."
Search it.
Mara clutched the phone under the blanket. "No, why not? If I'm cruel and you only asked for one tiny thing, show them." The room went very still. Mr. Calder looked at Mara. "No one is required to display private messages," he said carefully, but his tone had shifted. I took out my own phone. "I'll show mine then. I won't show personal details. Just the pattern." Mara stood. "You can't. I can show my own messages."
Anna.
There it was again. My name as a warning. I opened the search. Borrow. The screen filled. "Can I borrow your calculator for practice? Can I borrow your charger? Can I borrow your Blue Notes? Can I borrow your student portal for 2 seconds? Can I borrow your spare ID lanyard? Can I borrow your statistic summary? Can I borrow your battery if mine dies LOL? That last one had been sent 3 days before the exam in both lives. I had forgotten it because she added LOL, and girls like me were trained to treat jokes as consent forms. I held the phone up, not close enough for everyone to read fully, but enough for Mr. Calder to see the repeated word highlighted. "This was not one thing," I said. "It was a habit." Today I said no. Mrs. Lin's face flushed. "Are you seriously attacking my daughter because she trusted you?" "No," I said. "I'm explaining why I stopped letting that trust cost me." Mara's voice dropped. "You saved everything?"
No.
Search did. That's obsessive. Keeping my own chat history is not obsessive. You're making me look like some parasite. I looked at her for a long moment. The room held its breath. This was another trap. Agree, and I became cruel. Deny, and I softened the truth for her again. "I'm showing what you asked for," I said. "If it looks bad, that isn't because I saved it." Nia made a small approving noise beside me. Mrs. Lynn turned to Mr. Calder. This is harassment. Mr. Calder rubbed his forehead. No, Mrs. Lynn. This is a dorm conflict connected to an exam incident, and it is exactly why we should stop discussing it publicly.
He looked at me.
Elena, thank you. Put the phone away. I did. Mara sank back onto the couch, but her eyes stayed fixed on mine. Something had shifted. Not enough to destroy her. Enough to make the room less comfortable for her version. That was all truth often got at first. Discomfort. Mrs. Lynn gathered her handbag. We will be filing a formal complaint. You may, Mr. Calder said. His exhaustion had gained an edge. And the school will include today's common room discussion in the context. Mrs. Lynn's lips thinned. She guided Mara toward the exit, blanket still around her like royal mourning. As Mara passed me, she whispered, You think messages save you? No, I said quietly. But they help me save myself. She smiled again, that private smile.
Dawn, she said.
Wait for dawn. Then she was gone.
Dawn.
The word followed me through the evening like a footstep. In Meridian, final scores were processed overnight and released at 5:30 a.m. because the scholarship board met at 7. In my last life, I had woken to screaming in the hallway. Happy screaming, devastated screaming, the wild animal sound of futures rearranging themselves. Mara had stood on her bed reading her score aloud while everyone hugged her. I had refreshed my portal until my result appeared. 71.2. Cutoff, 73.0. Status, not advanced. Mara, 73.6. Status, advanced. The numbers had looked so small. I remember thinking the system should use bigger font when it ended your life. Now evening pressed down, and I realized I was afraid of the portal in a way refusing the battery had not fixed. What if Mara still passed? What if her manual work was enough? What if mine had mistakes? What if the score that crashed by dawn was not hers but mine again? Because fate is not a vending machine where you insert trauma and receive justice. I tried to sleep and failed. Nia sat on the floor painting her nails black and pretending it was normal to keep watch over me. Do you want tea? She asked at 10. No. Do you want me to insult Mara creatively? Maybe later. Do you want to talk about why you keep saying last time like you're in a horror movie? I turned onto my side. The room was dim. Mara's bed empty because she had been moved to a guest room after her mother's complaint. The space below my bunk shadowed and strange without her. I could have told Nia. The desire rose suddenly, painful in its simplicity. I wanted one person to know that I had died. I wanted someone to understand why my hands shook after I looked calm. I wanted to say, I have already paid for this morning once, and I am so tired. But truth without proof is a gift people can drop. Have you ever looked back and realized one tiny choice was actually a door?
I asked.
Nia considered. Yes. I'm trying to choose the other door. She capped the nail polish.
Good.
The old door sounded drafty. I laughed then, unexpectedly, and the sound startled both of us. For a moment, the room became only a room. 2 girls before results. A dead calculator somewhere in an evidence bag. A sealed packet of batteries on my desk. The universe holding its breath. At 12:41 a.m., my phone lit up with an email notification. My chest clenched so hard I sat upright. It was not the score. It was from the Academic Integrity Office. Subject: Request for a preliminary statement. Equipment irregularity. Meridian National Final. Nia leaned forward. What? I opened it with cold fingers. The message was formal and short. Both Mara and I were asked to submit written statements by 3 a.m. regarding pre-exam equipment interactions, observed disputes, and any relevant communications. My first thought was that Mara had done it. She had escalated before scores posted, trying to muddy the water so that if she failed, her failure would already have an enemy attached. My second thought was better. The office was awake. The process had not vanished. Miss Vale's notes had moved. I need to write a statement, I said. Nia stood. I'll write one too. They didn't ask you. They asked for relevant communications. I am a relevant communication with legs. In my last life, I had written my appeals statement after the damage, exhausted and ashamed, trying to sound calm while grief leaked through every sentence. This time, I wrote before the result. That mattered. I kept it plain. At approximately 5:20 a.m., Mara Lynn asked to use or borrow my calculator battery. I refused because candidates were instructed to provide their own equipment and because I needed my battery for my own calculator. I informed Miss Vale before check-in that I did not consent to lending or swapping equipment. I did not touch Mara Lynn's calculator or battery at any time. Mara's calculator was functioning at the start of the exam and later malfunctioned. I did not communicate with her during the exam except to ignore an attempted whisper before papers began. I attached screenshots of 3 relevant messages showing that Mara had previously referenced relying on my spare battery. I did not editorialize. I did not call her a thief. I did not mention Rebirth, warehouse dust, wet roads, or the way her cheek had been dry when she hugged me. Nia wrote her own statement and sent it separately to Miss Vale and Mr. Calder, copying the integrity office because apparently sleepy Nia had the instincts of a lawyer. At 2:13 a.m., Tessa messaged me again. Mara says you're submitting fake screenshots. I looked at the phone, then at Nia. Nia said, don't reply. I didn't. At 2:29, Leon messaged. I told them Mara mentioned your spares last week too. Sorry, I didn't say earlier. Another stone in the river. At 2:44, Dr. Astor emailed all candidates. Score release may include temporary holds for candidates under equipment review. Do not interpret delayed results as final outcomes. Mara had wanted dawn. Dawn was changing shape. The hours between 3 and 5:30 did not pass. They gathered. I sat at my desk with my laptop open, the portal login page glowing like a threat. Nia slept for exactly 20 minutes with her head on her folded arms, then woke up and claimed she was resting aggressively. Outside, rain began tapping the window. Of course it rained. Some details are dramatic because life has no taste. At 4:58, footsteps moved in the hallway. Doors opened. Whispers spread. Everyone knew scores were coming. Someone laughed too loudly, then stopped. My hands went numb. I rubbed them together, angry at my body for not understanding that we had already survived worse. At 5:21, the portal crashed under traffic. The hallway erupted in groans. Nia said, imagine dying of suspense because a school can't buy servers. I refreshed.
Error.
Refreshed. Error. At 5:29, the login page loaded. My username autofilled. My password failed because my fingers hit the wrong key. I almost threw up. Then I typed slowly. Enter. The dashboard opened. Results pending. My heart slammed. Pending. Nia leaned over. Maybe everyone's pending. Screams burst from the hallway. Not everyone. Someone shouted. I got advanced. Another voice sobbed. My page still said pending. A message banner appeared at the top. Your result is being processed. Please refresh after 5:45 a.m. I stared at it, and the old terror rose so violently, I tasted metal. Pending meant review. Review meant danger. Danger meant appeal rooms. Elena, Nia said, breathe. I stood because sitting felt like being trapped. The door flew open without a knock. Tessa stood there, hair loose, phone in hand, face pale. Mara's result is withheld, she said. She's telling everyone yours is too, because you're both under investigation. Mine says processing.
Mine posted.
Leanne's posted. Colin's posted. Only you and Mara are not showing in the group screenshots. Of course. Mara had tied us together. Even under review, she wanted one rope around both necks. My laptop chimed. New email. Academic Integrity Office. I opened it. My eyes moved once over the words, then again because my brain refused to trust them. Miss Voss, thank you for your preliminary statement. Your result was briefly delayed for cross-reference of invigilator notes. No irregularity is currently attached to your candidate record. Your result will release in the next refresh cycle. I sank into the chair. Nia grabbed my shoulder. Good. I nodded, unable to speak. Tessa exhaled like she had been holding her breath for me despite herself. In the hallway, Mara's voice rose, sharp and breaking. They can't do this. They can't withhold it. My mother is calling them right now. Dawn had arrived and it had teeth. At 5:46, my result posted. For a moment, I did not read it. I saw the layout first. Candidate name, Elena Voss. Paper, Meridian National Final. Status, completed. Overall score, 91.4. Ranking band, advanced distinction. Scholarship eligibility, advanced to interview round. I made no sound. The number was too far from the old one to belong to me, too clean, too bright, too alive. In my last life, losing the calculator had not cost me 1.8 marks. It had cost me composure, time, confidence, and the ability to prove what I knew. With my own tools and an unbroken mind, I had not scraped past the cutoff. I had cleared it by a distance so wide the old grief inside me fell silent. Nia screamed for me. Actually screamed. The hallway heard. She threw both arms around my shoulders and nearly knocked the laptop off the desk. 91.4. You absolute machine. Tessa covered her mouth. Elena, that's incredible. I stared at the screen until the digits blurred. I thought I would feel triumph. Instead, I felt a terrible tenderness for the girl in the other life who had believed 71.2 was a measure of her worth. It had never been. It had been a crime scene. Say something, Nia demanded. I swallowed. I want pancakes. She burst out laughing. The interruption saved me from crying. Then the hallway shifted. Mara appeared at the doorway, wrapped in the same blanket, hair undone. Phone pressed so tightly in her hand her knuckles looked bloodless. Behind her, Mrs. Lynn hovered with a furious expression and Mr. Calder stood several paces back, clearly failing to prevent a scene. Mara's eyes went to my laptop. She saw the score. For the first time in either life, I watched her face encounter a version of me she could not shrink. Congratulations, she said. The word came out almost normal. That made it worse. Thank you. Mine is withheld. I heard. Say you don't want this. The room stopped. What? Say you don't want my score withheld. Say this was a misunderstanding. Say you were angry and overreacted. If you tell them that, they'll release it. Nia stepped forward. Are you insane? Mara ignored her.
Elena, please.
You won. You got your score. You advanced. I'm not asking for your battery now. I'm asking you to be human. Human. There it was, the oldest hook. Be human meant bleed on command. Be kind meant erase the record. Be fair meant carry half her consequence, so she would not feel alone. I looked at the withheld result on her phone. Candidate under review. No score visible.
No ranking.
No future she could screenshot. I am being human, I said. I'm telling the truth. The truth is you hated me.
No.
The truth is I trusted you. That hit harder than accusation. I saw it land. Mara flinched. Mrs. Lynn stepped forward. This is enough. Elena, you will write a clarification immediately. I stood slowly. My legs trembled, but my voice did not.
No.
Mrs. Lynn looked as if no one had ever denied her in a language she understood. Excuse me?
No.
I won't lie to protect Mara from an investigation I didn't create. You created the suspicion. Mara created the suspicion when she brought a calculator with paper residue inside the casing. The room exploded in whispers. Mr. Calder said, Elena, but it was too late. Mrs. Lynn turned on Mara. Paper what? Mara's face emptied. Not because everyone heard, because her mother had not known. In every performance, there is one audience you are not ready to lose. It's nothing, Mara said quickly. A sticker. They're exaggerating. You told me Elena refused a battery. She did. You did not tell me anything about paper. Because it's stupid. It's not real. Mr. Calder's voice cut through. This discussion ends now. Mrs. Lynn, Mara downstairs. No, Mrs. Lynn said, but her certainty had cracked. I want to know what paper. Mara's eyes darted to me, and the hatred there was almost pure enough to be honest. Are you happy? She whispered. No, I said, and it was true. Happiness was too simple for this. I was relieved. I was shaking. I was angry. I was alive. But happy?
No.
Watching someone fall into a hole they dug with your shovel years ago is not happiness. It is geometry. I'm free. Mara laughed once, a broken sound. Free? You think this makes you free? Everyone will know you destroyed me over a battery. No, Nia said, stepping beside me. Everyone will know Elena stopped lending pieces of herself to someone who never planned to give them back. Tessa nodded, small but visible. Leanne appeared behind Mara in the hall and looked at the floor, but she did not defend her. That was how the room changed, not in one dramatic gasp, but in tiny withdrawals. A shoulder no longer offered. A silence no longer useful. Mara felt it. Her face twisted. For one moment I thought she would scream. Instead, she turned and walked away, blanket trailing behind her like a fallen flag. Mrs. Lynn followed, slower now. Mr. Calder gave me a look I could not read and closed the door halfway, leaving us in the stunned afterlight of consequence. Mara's final score did not post at 5:30. It did not post at 6. It did not post at 7, when the scholarship board convened behind the glass doors of the administration wing and candidates sat in the courtyard pretending not to stare at every adult who passed. Mine remained visible. 91.4. Advanced to interview round. I took a screenshot, backed it up, emailed it to myself, then wrote it on a sticky note because I needed proof in every form reality allowed. At 7:42, Dr. Astor called me into his office. In my last life, that office had smelled of coffee and disappointment when he told me there was nothing he could do about the cutoff. Now it smelled the same, but he stood when I entered.
Elena.
Congratulations on an excellent score. The words nearly undid me. Thank you. He gestured to the chair. Miss Vale was there too, seated by the window, clipboard replaced by a folder. My stomach tightened. Dr. Astor noticed. You're not in trouble. It is amazing how hard that sentence is to believe after a life built from the opposite.
He said.
Miss Vale opened the folder. We wanted to clarify the status of the equipment matter. Your statement, the floor monitor note, and additional witness statements align. There is no evidence of misconduct on your part. Okay. My voice sounded small. I hated that. Dr. Astor folded his hands. There may be rumors. Do not engage them. Your result stands. Your result stands. In my mind, a younger Elena sat up in a warehouse break room, dust on her sleeves, and began to cry. Miss Vale's expression softened. You did the right thing by stating your boundary early and documenting it. I looked at her. I was afraid it would make me look cruel. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries often describe boundaries as cruelty. The sentence went through me like light through glass. I would remember it longer than my score. Dr. Astor slid a paper across the desk. Your interview is scheduled for tomorrow at 10:20 a.m. Prepare to discuss your Section D response. It was one of the highest in the cohort. Highest. The word struck me as absurd. The section I had answered while Mara counted by hand, while the old life scratched at my neck, while my pen died, and I refused to panic. I touched the paper. Thank you. Miss Vale added. One more thing. If Miss Lynn or her family contacts you directly about changing your statement, forward it. Do not respond. I almost smiled. I've gotten good at not handing things over. Miss Vale's mouth twitched. Keep practicing. When I stepped out of the administration wing, the courtyard had become a theater. Candidates sat on benches, stood under trees, clustered near vending machines, refreshing phones and pretending not to wait for Mara's fate. The sky was fully bright now, washed clean by rain, the wet pavement reflecting everyone in broken pieces. Nia ran toward me with a pastry bag. Pancakes were logistically impossible, so I got custard buns. Acceptable. What did they say? My result stands. Interview tomorrow. She hooped again, and 3 people looked over.
Let them.
Tessa approached slowly.
Elena.
Nia's body shifted like a guard dog. Tessa noticed and stopped at a respectful distance. I'm sorry, she said. For this morning. For believing her too fast. I studied her. In my last life, I had wanted apologies like medicine. Now I understood they were more like weather. Good when they came, not enough to build a house on.
Thank you, I said.
I'm not ready to be normal with you. Tessa nodded, eyes wet. That's fair.
Fair.
Another word people used only after unfairness had done its work. Leanne joined her, twisting her sleeve. I gave a statement about the laundry room comment and the group chat. Thank you. She told us you'd always help because you were scared of people leaving. My throat tightened.
Mia said, wow.
Villain dialogue at breakfast. Leanne winced. I should have said something then. Yes, I said. Not cruelly. Just truthfully. You should have. Leanne nodded, accepting the hit. That mattered too. Not enough to erase. Enough to begin. At 8:18, a sound moved through the courtyard. Not a shout. A ripple. Phones lifted. The scholarship portal had updated the withheld list. Mara's name appeared under a new category. Result pending academic integrity determination. Temporary score excluded from ranking. Excluded. The word did not crash loudly. It fell with bureaucratic softness, and somehow that made it sharper. Mara emerged from the administration building moments later, with Mrs. Lin behind her. She looked smaller without an audience arranged in her favor. Her eyes found me across the courtyard. For a heartbeat, the whole campus seemed to narrow to the distance between us. Then her phone slipped from her hand and hit the wet pavement face down. Pattern interruption. No scream, no speech, no final accusation. Just the small, ugly crack of glass. By dawn, her final score had crashed, but not the way the old Elena would have imagined revenge. There was no scoreboard exploding, no villain dragged away under spotlights, no crowd chanting my name. There was only a withheld result, an excluded ranking, a cracked phone, and a girl who had built her future out of borrowed things suddenly asked to stand on her own. Later, I learned the details and pieces because institutions love silence until they need paperwork. The paper residue in Mara's calculator casing matched micro-folded formula strips, too damaged by battery leakage to read fully, but clear enough to trigger a misconduct hold. The cheap battery she bought that morning had leaked slightly under pressure or heat, smearing the hidden notes and corroding the contact. If she had used my fresh battery, maybe the calculator would have lasted. Maybe the strips would have stayed dry. Maybe she would have passed again, smiled again, hugged me again, and called the ruin of my life an unfortunate accident. The realization did not make me feel powerful. It made me sit on the bathroom floor after my interview and shake so hard Nia had to bring me water. Because the battery had not only powered a calculator, it had powered a lie. My kindness had been the final component in my own erasure. Without it, Mara's system failed. That was the part people misunderstood when they said I destroyed her. I did not. I removed myself from the machine, and it broke because it had been using me as a part. The interview went well, though I barely remembered walking in. Dr. Astor asked about my Section D analysis, and I explained temporary trends, unstable projections, and the danger of building long-term conclusions on false assumptions. Halfway through, I heard myself and almost laughed. The panel must have thought I was passionate about data integrity. Maybe I was. Maybe after living through a human version of corrupted data, you learn to respect clean inputs. At the end, one interviewer asked, "What changed your approach this year?" This year. As if there had only been one. I said, I stopped confusing pressure with responsibility. She wrote that down. Mara moved out of our room 3 days later. Not officially expelled yet, not cleared, suspended from ranking until the board completed review. Her mother arrived with 2 suitcases and no pearls. The dorm watched through half-open doors despite pretending not to. I stayed at my desk, revising interview notes for the second stage, because I refused to make her exit the center of my life. But when she came to collect the last box from under her bed, we were alone for the first time since dawn. She stood in the doorway, hair tied low, face bare, eyes swollen in a way that no longer looked strategic. For a moment, she was just a 19-year-old girl whose future had narrowed violently. Then she spoke and the moment died. I really did need it. I looked up. The battery? All of it. She laughed without humor. Your notes. Your calm. Your way of making teachers trust you. Your stupid, organized pencil case. You don't understand what it's like to have everyone expecting you to be exceptional when you're just good at looking like it. I closed my notebook. There it was. Not an apology, but a confession shaped like resentment. So, you decided I should pay for that? You would have survived.
Ich sagte her.
The words reached across lives and touched the dead girl on the wet road. No, I said quietly. I didn't. Mara frowned. What does that mean? I almost told her. Maybe a cruel part of me wanted her to know the size of what she had taken. But she would not believe me, and worse, she might enjoy being important enough to haunt two lives. Some truths deserve better than the person who caused them. It means you don't know what people survive, I said. You just know what you're willing to risk for them. Her mouth trembled, but no tears came. I thought you were my friend. I was. The simplicity of it hurt. That was the problem. She picked up the box.
At the door, she paused.
If I had asked differently, would you have helped? In my last life, yes. In this life, before memory, maybe. But the girl asking now was not asking about kindness. She was asking whether the mask had failed or the method. No, I said. Not with something I needed. Mara nodded slowly, as if filing that away for a future she would have to rebuild without me. Then I guess you really did change. No, I said. I returned. She did not understand. That was fine. She left with the box, and the room exhaled. Weeks later, when the final scholarship list was posted, my name appeared in the third slot. Elena Voss, Foundation Medical Scholar. I stood in front of the board for a long time, not because I needed to read it again, but because I needed the old life inside me to see it. Students moved around me. Someone congratulated me. Someone else whispered that Mara's appeal had failed. Her score, when finally released for internal record, was 62.8 before penalty, then invalidated for equipment misconduct. Crashed by dawn became the phrase people used because they liked drama, but the truth was quieter and worse. Her score had been crashing long before dawn. It crashed every time she chose image over effort, every time she borrowed instead of prepared, every time she mistook access for affection, every time I handed her another piece of myself and called the ache friendship. Dawn only showed the number. I visited the campus shop that afternoon. The cashier with chipped purple nails was there again, selling pens to a boy who looked terrified. The rack of calculator batteries hung beside the counter in neat rows. Blue cheap ones. Silver long life ones. I bought 2 packets of the good kind. The cashier scanned them and said, "Big exam?" Already had it. Went well. I thought of blank screens and wet roads, of Miss Vale's clipboard, of Nia's custard buns, of Mara's cracked phone, of my score glowing at 5:46 like a door opening. Yes, I said. This time it did. Outside, the courtyard was full of ordinary noise.
No thunder. No cosmic applause.
Just students laughing, rainwater drying, futures moving in every direction. I sat on a bench, opened my pencil case, and placed 1 sealed battery packet inside. The other I kept in my bag. Not because I planned to lend it, not because I feared losing everything again, because being prepared was no longer a service I owed other people. It was a promise I made to myself. The night before I left for the scholarship orientation, Nia threw what she called a no more communal batteries party in our room. It consisted of instant noodles, vending machine cookies, 3 girls sitting on the floor, and a paper crown she had made from old formula sheets. Tessa came too, awkward but sincere, bringing strawberries as a peace offering. Leanne brought tea. We did not talk about Mara at first. We talked about interviews, horrible dorm showers, Dr. Astor's coffee breath, the boy from North Wing who accidentally brought a TV remote instead of a calculator to practice and became a campus legend for 6 hours. I laughed more than I expected. My body still carried old fear, but it was learning new evidence. A knock came around 9. The room quieted. For one ridiculous second, I thought it would be Mara, returning for one last performance. It was Miss Vale. She stood in the doorway holding a small envelope. Everyone scrambled upright like we had been caught gambling. Miss Vale's eyes moved to the paper crown on my head. Should I ask? No, Nia said. Probably safer not to. Miss Vale handed me the envelope. This came through the residence office. From the scholarship board. My hands went cold again because trauma does not care how many good emails you have received. I opened it. Inside was a formal letter confirming my placement, stipend amount, mentor assignment, and preparatory summer schedule. Beneath the letter was a handwritten note from Dr. Astor. Your work showed clarity under pressure. Carry that forward. I read it twice. Miss Vale waited, then said, I also wanted to tell you something unofficially. Students often think major days are decided by major gestures. They're usually decided by small preparations no one claps for. Her eyes flicked to my pencil case. Keep your batteries. Then she left. Nia immediately grabbed the note and read it aloud in a dramatic voice until I threatened to throw a strawberry at her. But after everyone fell asleep, I stayed awake under the glow in the dark stars Mara had left on the ceiling, holding the letter against my chest. In my last life, I had thought the universe ended at 71.2. In this one, I understood numbers were doors, not verdicts. Some closed.
Some opened.
Some you had to stop holding for other people long enough to walk through yourself. I saw Mara once more before orientation. It happened at dawn, because apparently life enjoyed symmetry more than I did. I was leaving the dorm with my suitcase, the sky still gray, taxi waiting near the gate, when she stepped out from behind the old notice board. For a moment, I thought she looked like the Mara from the first morning. Cream cardigan, hair clipped back, face pale with rehearsed softness. Then I saw the difference. No audience. No mother.
No tears.
Just exhaustion. I'm not here to fight, she said. I kept one hand on my suitcase handle. Okay. My appeal failed. I heard. Of course you did. A bitter smile touched her mouth, then faded. They offered me a chance to reapply next year after a conduct course.
No scholarship. No ranking.
I said nothing. She looked toward the East Examination Center. Windows dark, doors locked. I keep thinking about that morning. If I had bought the right battery, maybe none of this would have happened. The old Elena might have comforted her with fate, told her everything happened for a reason, softened the blade. I did not. If you hadn't hidden notes in your calculator, none of this would have happened. Mara closed her eyes briefly. Still direct. Still true. She nodded. I hated you for saying no. I know. I still kind of do. I know that too. She looked at me then, and something like honesty moved across her face, awkward and amused. But I also think maybe you were the first person who ever did. Did what? Said no and meant it. I did not know what to do with that. It was not an apology. It was not forgiveness. It was a small, bruised truth placed between us with no wrapping. I could leave it there.
So I did.
Mara hugged her arms around herself. I don't know who I am without people helping me look better than I am. The taxi driver honked once, impatient. My future waiting, ordinary and loud. I lifted my suitcase. Then I hope you find out. Mara's eyes glistened, but she did not cry. Do you forgive me? The question arrived too late for the girl who had died and too early for the woman I was becoming. I thought about lying. It would have been kinder in the shallow way. But I had not survived 2 lives to hand her another false comfort. No, I said. Her face tightened. But I'm not carrying you with me either. She looked down. That's something, I guess. It is. I walked to the taxi. At the door, I turned back once. Mara stood under the notice board where next year's exam warnings had already been pinned. Bring approved equipment. Check all batteries.
No sharing.
She read the notice, and for the first time, I hoped she understood it was not only about calculators. The taxi pulled away as the sun rose over Meridian, washing the examination center in gold, so bright it almost looked forgiven. I watched the campus shrink through the rear window. Somewhere behind those walls, another girl was probably lending something she needed because she was afraid a friend would stop loving her. Somewhere, another Mara was learning which voices bent. Somewhere, another final waited to punish the unprepared and the too generous equally because systems rarely know the difference unless we force them to. I open my bag and check my pencil case. Calculator.
Pens.
ID. Admission documents. Spare batteries. Everything there. Everything mine. My phone buzzed with a message from Nia. Don't become too fancy for vending machine cookies. I smiled and replied, never. Then another message arrived from an unknown number. For 1 second, old fear touched me. But it was only Tessa sending a photo from the dorm room, the paper crown on my empty desk, the words and oh more communal batteries written across it in black marker. I laughed so hard the taxi driver glanced at me in the mirror. Good news, he asked. I looked at the road ahead, wet from last night's rain but brightening now, every lane opening into morning. In another life, a road like this had been the end. In this one, it was only a road. Yes, I said. Very good. And because the universe had returned me not to punish Mara, not to hand me revenge, but to teach me the shape of my own hand when it finally stopped opening for people who only came to take, I leaned back, held my future in my lap, and let dawn carry me forward.